It's a Thursday, so as ever, welcome to MongoDB TV Cloud Connect. For regular viewers, welcome back. It's good to have you once again. For new viewers, I'm Shane McAllister. I'm a lead developer advocate here on the developer relations team at MongoDB, and I host this Cloud Connect show every Thursday on YouTube and on LinkedIn. So if you've missed some past episodes, please do check them out both on LinkedIn events and also on YouTube Live. And keep an eye out certainly for forthcoming episodes as well too. While we're waiting to get underway, let us know who you are and where you're joining us from. We love to see the corners of the globe that we attract our audience in from, and we'd love to hear from you. And once you get underway, use the comments and the chat to ask any questions for myself and our other presenters today as well too. We'll try to answer them live whilst we're going through our show. If we can't answer them live, we'll try and wrap them up at the end of the show as well too. This is being recorded, so will be available on MongoDB YouTube channel once it's finished, and also in the past episodes on events on LinkedIn as well too. So if you can't stay for all of it, don't worry. You'll be able to jump back in there at any time and go back through this episode and our recording. If you're not live and you are watching this as a recording, although we can't chat with you, please do leave some comments and we'll take a look at those and also try to respond. And on YouTube, don't forget to like and subscribe as ever to the MongoDB YouTube channel and follow us on LinkedIn for all our latest posts and news. Anyway, with all that said, this Cloud Connect is entitled Generative AI with MongoDB Atlas and Google Cloud BigQuery. So we're going to walk viewers step by step through practical use cases of moving subsets of operational data on Atlas into BigQuery and creating machine learning models in BigQuery and using generative AI to perform natural language tasks. But as ever, I've brought along some experts and brought along some help. So I'm delighted to be joined firstly by Abirami. Abirami is a developer advocate with Google, and also this is the Google Cloud Connect show. Mira joins us once again. You're both very welcome. How are you?
We're good. How are you, Shane? How are you doing?
I'm good. It's good to be doing this show. I always look forward to these. Our viewers probably familiar with yourself, Mira, and your role here on your past shows. But Abby, you might give us an introduction to yourself and your role at Google.
Thank you so much for hosting me, Shane, and hi again, Mira. Uh, I'm Abirami Sukumaran. I'm a developer advocate at Google, focusing on Google Cloud databases and data to AI, covering application development, serverless, and most of AI, ML, and now generative AI as well, but predominantly databases, as I'd like to say. Uh,
That's a
yeah,
pretty
so
big remit with everything that's changing at the moment now too, Abby. How do you manage to keep up with all of the changes, particularly in the generative AI space?
Yeah, that's the best part. As a developer advocate, you get to try out the things firsthand, and also work on those things exclusively to experience what the developers will go through when they're using the products. And I think that's the best part of uh, my day, and also
Mhm.
best part of the nature of the work as well. So yeah, so keeping up becomes comes in handy with not just the role, but also the opportunity and the tech and the services and the products that I am closely associated with. I mean, if you are in the databases area or in the data to AI journey, you end up having to keep yourself up to date, right? So yeah, that's been part and parcel of everyday work.
Excellent. And I know today, obviously, we're going to touch on two main areas. Obviously, we're going to talk about BigQuery and obviously generative AI. Talk to me a little bit, first of all, because we get this question, from time to time, why Atlas and BigQuery? We always talk in MongoDB about, with all of our partners, how we're better together. How is BigQuery and Atlas very complementary?
Yeah, so I go first, Mira, or if you want to take that one, what?
Oh yeah, sure. You can take it. Yeah, I guess the bigger question is like, do you consider BigQuery as a database, or Like, what is it for you? Because I don't quite think of it as a database. That's why complementary technologies. But yeah, what is your opinion on that?
I argue about this literally every other day with even our own teammates in here because, I mean, not that anyone refuses to see it as a database for that matter, but it's a conventional thing that we tend to think about analytics and we tend to think about uh, BigQuery and then associate that with a data warehouse or a data lake or stuff like that. But I would say databases, that's what existed first. I mean, that's the root of everything. And it is a database first. It can be anything else after that. You can do whatever you can do in a database in BigQuery. So to me, it is and will always be database. And on top of that it's many other things. You can build ML applications, you can build AI, generative AI applications, you can call APIs from within BigQuery. You can use it complementary to other databases, which are like MongoDB. In this case, you will show a demo, and we will be discussing about how to integrate the data from MongoDB to BigQuery, stream that in. So yes, so definitely, I would. The first thing for me is yes, it is a database and other things.
Okay. And look, I know we've got essentially two demos to show, and we kind of be able to illustrate that in the course of the demos. But Abby, if I could jump back up a couple of levels about essentially, this Gen AI space where we are today has long history and long roots, essentially in machine learning. And it's a space that Google have been in for a long time. Could you give our audience an overview of that? I suppose, the pathway to where we got to now, and also a summary of the various products and tools that Google has in this space, the Gen AI space.
Yeah, definitely. Um, so one thing which I would definitely like to cover is the difference between the traditional machine learning
Mhm.
and Gen AI. Because before we go into the evolution of Gen AI itself, I think
'Cause
we
they're
covered.
always getting mixed up, right? So there's and people interchange these. You've machine learning, artificial intelligence, Gen AI, etc., all being muddled around a bit too, right?
Yeah, and I'm going to take a stab right now to be concise, but at the same time address concretely the difference between the three.
Sure.
But yeah, you can correct me if you feel like it doesn't make sense to you. So machine learning to me is when you teach a machine or train a machine to identify patterns from data or from any form of data that you're trying to provide and make predictions out of or understand pattern out of. Let's say, for example, um, if you know in sports and in I forget the names. Andrea Gassi against I forgot the other player, but in tennis per se, even before ML or AI came into existence, technologically speaking, so Andrea Gassi used the power of pattern recognition in identifying his opponent's body language and body movements and associate this pattern to responding to it
Okay.
appropriately. And that's how he won a series of his initial matches. I forget the name of the player against who he won. So if the audience know, please ping. And I feel really ashamed
Yeah,
of that.
yeah,
I've worked.
no, it's like, it's funny, the older tennis players and the older athletes disappear from our memories. It might be a Pete Sampras or somebody like that
No,
back
no,
in the day,
yeah, I'll get back. It'll come back to me later. So that is machine learning. And that is not just machine learning. In that case, I'll tell you how it has an overlap with AI there too. But then coming to AI, what I think is if there is a human element or a sensory element to it, like for instance, you add a vision to it, or you add, like when you're doing when you're teaching or training the machine to do something, but at the same time add a human element to it in whatever form, like voice or
Mhm.
audio or visual or image, then it becomes AI. No, it's not Virat Kohli, Mohammad Ismail. Very bad. um, and Gen AI. Now, these two are still having to like train on a certain set of data, teaching the machine to do something, training the machine to do something. Whereas in generative AI, you will ask the machine to generate something while the underlying model itself, the large language model or the generative or whatever the vision model or the audio, the model that it runs on is already trained by heaps and heaps of data
Mhm.
by the provider that's hosting that model, right? So In this case, ML is used for training the Gen AI models on the data, but we are not using ML to use the generative AI apps. We are just using generative AI as an API, for instance, or we are just using it to ask what we want and get the data in whatever format generated for us. So basically, generative AI, as the name implies, is asking the machine to generate new content for us, and that's where we have to be a little explicit about what exactly we are looking to get out of the system, out of the API or the generative AI provider that you're using, to make sure that you get relevant information or the information that you're looking for, rather than getting just anything created. So
I
yeah,
think that's a
that
really good definition, and I think it's probably part of, I think it's Google's own training, where I think, they were making the analogy that machine learning could recognize whether an image is a dog or a cat. Generative AI could create the image of a dog or a cat based on its knowledge and its training that it has. Talk to us a little bit, in the audience more particularly, about the large language models, the LLMs behind all of this. Then a little bit about those. How are they pre-trained? How do what extent of the size of the training that they need in order to be able to function correctly with the intelligence that we give them?
definitely. Do you happen to have the deck handy? That actually I have it too. Can I share? I mean, Mira, if
Sure,
you would
by all means.
share that way. I mean, I think I'm having some bandwidth issues, so if you can share,
Yeah,
it'll be
sure.
great.
I can share it.
Yeah, the slide where we talk about the evolution, and then
Hmm.
yeah, the vertex AI. So start with the evolution part. Boris Becker is the answer. Thank you, Daniel.
Boris,
That's the right answer too.
there's an interesting story about Boris Becker now, that he's just been assigned as a coach to somebody new after a bit of a stint uh, in for tax fraud somewhere else. But we won't get in there. It is a conversational show after all. But yeah, superb tennis player. I think I remember Boris Becker back in the day because he was the youngest player to ever win Wimbledon. And at that point in time, he was younger than me, which is quite concerning. So I could never beat that record. Anyway, I digress. We've got this
No,
slide
no,
up
that's
about the
fine
large
because
language models.
but because that's one of the most important applications of ML AI and now generative AI. The reason is, I don't know if there's many audience from the US, many participants from the US, but Major League Baseball, if you have, or a fan of Brad Pitt or a fan of Moneyball, you would know that it's data all over the place, right? Even before we
A lot
had
of
any
statistics
APIs running.
in there.
Huh?
A
Hmm?
lot of statistics in there in that sport that
Yeah.
I don't understand at all. But yeah, I've heard that like people really love to
Did
track
you know that
statistics.
in that Moneyball film, the I can't remember the name of the person who did all the stats, but they've started a company called stats.com, which is still ongoing, which does all the statistics that you see on all of the live sports screens in your home or in pubs, etc. So the movie led
Yeah.
to building a huge business around that.
It's the Statcast, I think. If you're talking about the Statcast app and the API, BigQuery
Mm.
is what powers it actually
Oh
for all the
wow. Oh,
analytics.
that's a good that's a good segue. There we go.
Yeah, we have a lot of stories on MLB. Even I have some blogs out there. It's available publicly. So yeah. Anyway, sorry for going on a tangent, but that topic always interests me. Not the baseball part. I don't understand that game, but um, yeah. But anyway, yeah, so this is the slide where I wanted to talk about the parameters, the size of the parameters that are used for training. Tens of hundreds of billions of parameters are pre-trained on petabyte scale text-based data sets for these large language models, and that answers your question to how.
Mm.
Like, and of course they have to be highly available. The response has to be quick. So yeah, they run on heavy duty machines to support all that. And uh, the if you go to the next slide, we can probably see the evolution. It all started with transformers back in the day, and then several APIs that we may have used, like BERT and Lambda, were pretty popular before generative AI. Even the name
Mhm.
took us by storm. I think I said this in yesterday's webinar as well. BERT is something that's very close to my heart. A lot of analytics problems when it comes to org analytics in any industry, I've used BERT quite a bit if it's text based, right? For doing some log analytics or doing analytics on user reviews or user uh, sentiment and all those things. BERT has always been a great summarizer API. But then
I
from
love the
going
way
from,
they put together the acronyms for BERT, so bidirectional encoder representations from transformers. Which came first, the BERT or or that explanation? I love how that's done, though. Across all tech, we're always guilty of that.
yeah. And then the diffusion models, and then yeah, now with generative AI, Bard, which is the consumer, the user facing app, and then the generative AI APIs, that's made available in Google Cloud's Vertex AI. Mira, if you go one slide after, advance it. No, to Vertex AI, probably skip a few slides. We'll come to prompt. Yeah, this one. So this one talks about the different services and the what is available from the console for you to use the APIs, and generative AI Studio for that matter. What are the things that are available? So this speaks to itself. Model Garden is where you'll see all the. So that is a good place to find your ML models, your APIs that are AI specific,
Mhm.
like Vision API, Video API, Video Analytics API, and also all the generative AI text, vision, and audio APIs, video APIs. So you will find all that in the in Model Garden. So what you see there is the open source models which are made available within Google Cloud, and also foundation models which are like built and made available within Google Cloud, which is built by Google as well. So those are all available at the same place. So Vertex AI is like a suite of AI ML services that are made, and APIs that are made available at the same place. Generative AI Studio is a console which lets you perform all these generative AI tasks in a user interactive fashion. So that way, you don't have to write code. You can point and click and drag and drop and do stuff, and then click generate code and get the code for it. So you copy the code and run it in your own editor, or use Cloud Shell editor to perform those tasks. So it makes your life easier when it comes to implementing, taking your idea into prototype or idea into code. And then the bottom part in blue stack is everything that was already there, the ML platform itself, the ML ops, the entire CI/CD cycle, retraining, and all that that's available as part of Vertex AI. Sorry for the long answer to a
No,
straightforward
no,
question.
no, that's great. And one of our viewers gave us some more insight into your tennis analogy, Abby. So Daniel says Agassi learned to beat Boris Becker by watching his tongue. I think I remember that. If it was to
Yeah.
the left or to the right, the serve was going one way or the other way. So, Daniel, thank you for that extra information.
And there is one, sorry to this, I have to say this because otherwise I'll have an itch in the brain. So in the end, or in the end, in the sense, in the end of their careers, like after they retired or when they were having a conversation after the games, so Boris Becker revealed that apparently it was not difficult for him to follow the cues and win a game. It was the most difficult part was for him was to hide the fact that he knows that clue,
Oh,
and use it only when it's absolutely necessary, because otherwise he'll give it away.
that's a fair point. Who'd have thought now we'd learn a lot about tennis and machine learning on the Cloud Connect show? But that's why people tune in. I hope to hear the strange connections that we make. I'm just going to bring this up because I know we're going to touch on it a bit later from Nelson. He's learning about starting an LLM project in Portuguese. Good luck with that. LLMs are as Abby said, tens, if not hundreds of thousands of millions of points of data. But he says he knew MongoDB as a NoSQL database, but as a storage engine for GenAI, that was a novelty. So Mira is going to touch on vector search a little later as well, too, which really increases our possibilities with all of the GenAI space out there as well. But thank you for that comment, Nelson, on the way, too. One more before we maybe get into our demos, too, is I don't know, we're always being poked on this subject whenever we bring up AI. What are the possibilities of AI taking over in the iRobot movie? I think I've heard and I've interviewed some people about these topics, and I think at the end of the day, always there is an element of cautionary tale with regard to what we're doing. I think the key thing for us in the tech space is that this is the very beginning of what can happen in terms of our application of artificial intelligence across the board. And I think the majority of examples that I've seen have always been for the better. In our case at MongoDB, it's about making developers' jobs easier, empowering them, making them better, removing some of the mundane work, and allowing them to get on to build great applications. So I know that's a question that always comes up, but that's my personal take on it. Mira, Abby, any thoughts on that?
I would love to see that happen.
No, I'd let Mira take this one. I want to hear from her on this.
The robots don't. Yeah, I don't know. Actually, it's interesting because we do see a lot of advancements in AI and ML this year specifically. And of course, there are advancements in robotics as well, but I don't think that space, like the kind of the hardware space, is keeping up as fast as the software part. So it will be actually nice to see a bit more advancement in robotics. Yeah, besides the creepy like dog robots that that they're building.
Yeah, you're not going to make a good science fiction movie out of the nice things that come out of AI and
Yeah.
robots, right? It's always going to be the dystopian, the future is terrible type movies. So yeah, you're not going to see the nice ones. Look, this has been a superb overview. We've got to see, I suppose, the history of how we've got to this point today, the suite of products that Google have there under obviously the Vertex AI umbrella as well too. Abby, thank you very much. So Mira, you're going to show us a little bit of a demo on training the BigQuery machine learning model as well too, right?
Yeah, I will. So we did build that demo with Abby about a year ago, but we're going to show it today. And we do have a blog post about it. And of course, we're going to throw in some generative AI spice into it as well later to make it relevant for today's world.
Which is
But
new.
this is
That part is not a year old. We
yes.
yeah, that we built it pretty recent. But we wanted to make sure that this demo, how you put the pieces together, because we Mira and I have talked about the integration from MongoDB and BigQuery quite a few times, but this is the first time we are talking about generative AI in addition to that. So sorry, go
Yep.
ahead, Mira.
Yeah, so this is like a really simple application that demonstrates the machine learning model that we built. So basically, I have a form with details about the movie. I can fill in any details I want here. It could be an existing movie, it could be a movie that I just came up with. So I specify different characteristics such as the title, the rating, the genre, the director, writer, the budget, which is important for the rating of the movie, apparently, the company, and so on and so on. And when I press that button, get score, the movie will go over to a machine learning model that we trained on a large data set of movies, and we're going to get a prediction for the rating of this movie. So if this was a non-existing movie, if it hit the theaters, what would be the predicted rating that it might get from viewers. And for this movie that we all know very well, and it's a real movie, The Green Mile, our machine learning model says that if it hits the theaters today, it would get 8 out of 10 as a score. And we also see the actual rating because this is a real movie. And we see that it is kind of close. It's 8.6 in IMDb out of 10. Let's try a different one.
So Mira, if
when
you
I
were a very cynical Hollywood movie producer mogul, you could play around with this and
Yep.
figure out, what title, what cast, what director is going to make me the most, well, maybe not the most money, but the better ratings, I suppose.
Yeah, we can actually try that. It's interesting if we're gonna get different scores. So if I score this freaked movie, it got a 6 out of 10. And maybe if I change the director to I don't know who's a famous director, David Cameron is someone that comes to my mind. Um,
Or James Cameron, isn't it?
oh yeah, it's James Cameron. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was wondering what happened to our elastic search that you built on Atlas.
Yeah, so it is hooked into an Atlas search index that is actually looking into a database that we are storing in MongoDB Atlas, so we can search for different directors and different movies here as well. Let's try to increase the budget. I wonder if that will make any difference with the score.
It's
Actually,
thinking.
this that feature I like
Still
a
6.
lot.
Yeah,
Yeah,
so
so
it's not
I
the
guess this
director's
movie
fault.
can't be helped. I wonder
Yeah.
if we make it like a drama. For some reason, actually, dramas are highly rated compared to comedies, at least in IMDb. That didn't change it as well. I guess it's beyond help, this movie over here. But yeah, it's an interesting application. You can actually play with it later. It's publicly available, and try and see what movie or like what combination of characteristics or parameters here gives you the best score. And yeah, it's a fun demo. Um,
One of
let's
the
see.
viewers
Can I try
asked, could we
Inception?
try Inception 2 and Christopher Nolan as, as the
I
director?
think
Obviously.
if it's new, we'll have to put in the information for all those other fields.
Oh, all of the things. Okay. Okay. That
If it's
makes
brand
sense.
new, I mean, if it's not part of our database. But I
You
think
could probably
Inception is.
try like Fast and Furious 37 or something and
Yeah,
see what that one makes.
let's see. 2030. It's probably gonna have like a huge budget. Not sure if 2030 will work. Okay, might work.
Was it
See what we
already
get.
there, Inception 2, or did you type in?
No, I just typed Inception and I changed it. Well, it's getting 8. I guess we need to modify a lot more of the parameters here. Yeah, to get a different score. It's fun. I bet if I change the country, it's gonna get a much lower rating.
Maybe try changing the. Yeah.
No, still an 8. Okay,
Cool.
fun stuff.
So
All right.
what we want to also show here, Mira, you probably want to talk about the like what we're trying to do with this and how the other factors influence the generative AI. I
Mhm.
think do you want to touch upon that as well? Like why will we introduce generative AI in this? So that will probably link from where we started. Like what is the difference between ML and Gen AI? So you can tell that with the app. So that would be really while your app is still open. I thought that would be interesting.
Yeah, so the GenAI part that we have decided to incorporate is basically we are asking the model which of the fields that you see here do you think influenced this score, or which of the fields contribute to a higher score? And we're going to see that at the end.
Mhm.
And this is something that I called exploratory analytics, but Abby told me it's not quite correct. So I guess this is what is it? Is it data insights that we can get using generative AI? Is that the
Right.
right term for it?
Yeah, because exploratory is still okay in colloquial terms, but it also has a straight reference to something in the machine learning world where people normally tend to think exploratory data analysis is visualization of your data. Even though we are visualizing it in a different format, we are using language model, we are using summary, but it immediately people just picture it as graphs and charts showing this is the correlation between these fields. So yeah, I mean technically we are using
Mhm.
LLM to do that, but just say let's just call it insights so people don't mistake it for okay. So if I say that you can do EDA with generative AI, yeah, you can still do EDA with generative AI, but that's not the phase you want to just limit yourself as a generative AI application. You can use it, you can sprinkle generative AI application throughout the process. You can use it in your code, you can use it in your analytics, you can use it in your visualization part or exploratory part, and then predictive part and also prescriptive part where you say okay, the what like maybe you want to increase the budget a bit, or maybe you want to change the director probably for your movie, then you might be more successful with your venture or something like that, right? So prescriptive, so you can use it in all these applications. So that's the only reason I said let's not use the word exploratory, because that might just box them into one phase.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, but it's really gave me a different view on generative AI, and I think it's really interesting that you can actually use it to understand your data better, and it can actually help you do better analytics by just because it allows you to kind of get insights in from
Mhm.
a much larger set of data than what you can like get yourself by looking at the a sample of the data yourself. So that's really interesting. Yeah.
And how about retraining the model then, so as well too? Like you were building this, I understand, the concept of how everything is linked together and having, but is there an element of I think the one thing for me when people talk about Gen AI, and obviously the Vertex AI Studio helps in a lot of this, is you just got to play around with it to get the parameters correct as well too. Mira, can you talk about how you fine tune that?
Yeah, so you can retrain your models in BigQuery using um, either AutoML, I think, or BigQuery ML. And I guess what is interesting here is if you're using MongoDB as your application database, how do you get the data from that database over
Hmm.
to BigQuery, which we established that is also a database, but again, they're complementary. You can use one for your transactional workloads for basically storing the data that your application needs, and MongoDB is optimized for real-time queries for high throughput, something that you can use in your application basically. And on the other hand, you can use BigQuery for long-running analytics, for uh, training a machine learning model, for retraining that model if needed, for generative AI as well. So yeah, they can be used as complementary technologies. But that also leads us into this space that we need to replicate our data over to BigQuery. So how do
Hmm.
we move it there? How do we make that happen? And we have different strategies for that. We have written on the MongoDB Developer Center about a whole bunch of them. The one that we typically recommend to people is using Dataflow. So Dataflow is another service in Google Cloud that allows you to basically move data around. And we have different templates that you can use. I think I actually have a screenshot of one of them somewhere over here. Oh yeah, so this is the data flow interface,
Hmm.
and you can build jobs from scratch, or you can use just a template that is published on the Google Cloud website. So here, if we search for MongoDB, we can see that we have 4 different templates. We can move data from MongoDB to BigQuery in batches, from BigQuery to MongoDB again in batches, or we can also have a CDC stream that subscribes to a MongoDB change stream, which is tracking changes in your database collection. And when these changes happen, you can receive them into this kind of job in Dataflow, transform the changes, and store them over to your data warehouse to BigQuery, and then use them for analytics or use them to retrain your machine learning model. And this is like another discussion that we had with Abby, because I'm not like a machine learning expert, and I was wondering like how often should you retrain that model? How much data is enough? Like obviously it's retraining a model or training a model in general is not a very cheap task. So I was kind of wondering what number is good here. I was trying to find something to tell our viewers. So every 10,000 new records we can retrain, it's going to be better. Or every like thousands records we can retrain, and now it's going to be better. And Abby had a different opinion on that, and she said that there is no like definitive number. There are like a lot of factors that you need to take into account when retraining your machine learning model. And it's not just like about the data, it's also about the nature of the model. But yeah, this is what I got from the answer. She perhaps can say that in a more scientific, more meaningful way.
No, I'll just give you one example where, like in the same use case that you demonstrated, in the same demo that you showed in the UI, right? So as you may have noticed, everyone who's in the live right now, we saw that at a certain after a certain point, the numbers did not change irrespective of what tweaks you did. Um, so I'll have to tell you, these are to a certain extent retrained as well. And they're kind of conditioned now or trained now to think that okay, this is a kind of movie, or even from the name it kind of assumes that okay, this should be its rating. Why? Because these are already movies that are stored in our database. Like we have when we entered these movies for the first time, it probably functioned well because at that time it didn't have a reference point. But then what we do, one point that I don't know if Mira already covered it, but when you hit save or when you hit predict and get that score in the app below, it not only calls the prediction API to the model to predict it, it also writes back. I think she explained it. It also writes back to our source, which means we are telling that your prediction is okay, but here is what the reality is. So it's now having a real value to compare against. So it knows that it's retrained or conditioned to a certain value. So if you enter something brand new, you might actually see what it really thinks about or what the score is and how you can tweak it. But again, now this is a point where retraining could come in really handy because the numbers show us that we could do a lot better and add in a lot more data to do to retrain the model to perform better, right? So definitely factors like this will need to be accounted for when it comes to retraining. I wouldn't definitely go with a specific number, say 10,000 records or 2,000 records. At some point, it's even possible that if you hit 500 and you feel like you had a completely different understanding of the data when you built the model, and you may have to rebuild the model and do a retrain again because it's not just the data there, it's also the model that went wrong or was misunderstood or something has changed with the nature of the data. So that and anything new that's coming in or or the change in the structure and format of data, or like for example the application of data per se. So many other factors go into that. So I don't have an answer to a cookie cutter answer for all the use cases in general, but I'm sure there are guidelines, but I'm not aware of that, of any particular guide. I mean, aware of a number per se, but these are the factors that influence that I know, as a matter of fact. So, thanks for asking that, Meera. I thought I had this in mind too, that I have to cover why the response is not, the model is not very responsive of the changes. But yeah, you asked the right question, so I could address it.
Sure thing. Yeah, it's a fun application, and yeah, let me go over the retraining again, because when we talk about retraining, there is also that part of the part that really interests people, I guess, is how do I move data around, and how do I keep them in sync? And I guess the answer here is that you don't necessarily want to keep your data warehouse that you use for analytics in sync with your operational data, um, or your transactional database. You kind of want to select some subsets that will make sense to analyze and move them over. And also, some things shouldn't really be recorded as a one-to-one kind of relationship. For example, if you have like a record and the record in your transactional database changes its status, you might want to record this change in status or like change in its state over into the data warehouse. And when it changes the status again in within the week 3 times, these are important changes. These are things that your analysts might be interested in. So you kind of want to store these this again in the place where you want to do your analytics. You shouldn't go ahead and overwrite the record in BigQuery. You should actually track every single change as a separate thing. Um, and yeah, I think that is kind of important to notice, and clarify that they shouldn't be like kept in sync. They shouldn't be necessarily the same thing because you're using them for different purposes usually, or you should be using them for different purposes. Again, BigQuery, analytics, machine learning, MongoDB, your application database. And yeah, it does make sense to have different types of data in both of them. But with that said, how do we actually replicate changes over time, not in batches, but as a continuous job that is running? I think I have like a diagram over here. We're gonna skip the hands-on part for a second here. Um, All right, this is my diagram. So you can set up, we saw earlier, we have 4 templates. You can set up a batch job, but you can also set up a CDC job. And this CDC job will essentially subscribe to a change stream in MongoDB. And change streams are something that is available in MongoDB at its core. It's not an Atlas thing. It's a MongoDB feature that has been there for a while. And change streams track changes in your database in a single collection. So it could be an insert, it could be an update, it could be a delete of a record. But these are basically events that happen in your database. So you can subscribe to these events in Dataflow inside this CDC job. And when you receive the change, you can transform it in a meaningful way. You might have to flatten some fields, you might have to remove some arrays or move them away, or even like remove the fields that you don't care about. And then you can store that change, that new record, inside your BigQuery table. And now, when you do that, using another kind of similar mechanism, actually, you can use an event arc trigger and listen for changes in your BigQuery table. And you can execute custom logic in a cloud function. And this custom logic can be anything. It can be about retraining a machine learning model. It could be about running a new analytical query. That is, again, a long running query, usually, if you do it in BigQuery. It could be about many things. And again, this example that we have, it is about this movies model, this use case. But it is kind of a very powerful architecture that you can apply to many use cases. And yeah, just take advantage of it. If you think about the use case that you have, you will find that this is something that you might be able to apply. Another thing that's important to notice is that the Dataflow templates are only working with MongoDB Atlas right now, not with the enterprise or community version of MongoDB. But again, they're just a mechanism that uses change streams, which are a native feature. So if you want it, you can build your own custom solution that takes advantage of change streams and kind of repurposes the same template that we have in Dataflow, but runs on your own servers.
Okay, I think we have a relevant-ish question from our viewers, which was, how useful is this for enterprise where data protection comes first? But I think you kind of cover that, Mira, because we're not passing everything across. We're only taking a subset of the data. So data protection obviously can be how you decide what that subset is. You don't have to pass everything. Is that correct?
Yeah, definitely. And the reality is that you can use MongoDB for analytics. It is suitable for a certain type of analytics, maybe not in the scale that BigQuery allows you to perform, like long-running queries is. But the reality is that most people move their data somewhere else when they want to analyze it. They usually don't even want their analysts to be able to touch the production database. That's like the biggest reason why they move the analytical data over to some other place and give it to their analysts, which use their familiar tools to then analyze it. So yeah, the reality is that data movement happens. In the industry, we try to minimize that, usually just to kind of save costs and save time. But the reality is that people move data around, and you should figure out how to do it in a secure way.
Perfect. One other
And
before we
can I-
advance, I suppose, is this point really more so than a question. If you'd like to practice integrating GenAI and MongoDB, do we have some training data? If you go to Atlas, we have loads of sample data up there. It's restaurant reviews, it's Airbnb data, it's movies, the movies database that Mira has up there as well too. And the other thing too, Abby, is that if you go to Vertex AI Studio, there's loads of templates and people can get used to playing around with that as well, correct?
That is right. But if you excuse me, can I just add one more point to the security question? Of 3 more points per se.
You can
Just
have three,
to,
no problem.
I'll try to make it really short and quick. But I just thought it might be an interesting discussion. So when it comes to data protection, privacy, localization, generalization, it is the most important thing. So I always talk about this when I'm addressing startups or when I'm doing hands-on sessions with developers or knowledge general discussions like this,
Mhm.
is that you should not be thinking about it as an after fact or an after effect of your business or your startup idea or even an application architecture per se. That should be on the top three things or the one thing that you think about when you start. So when you're designing, just make sure, let's say you're in a particular region or location or country that doesn't allow you to store data in certain other regions, or you're in a place where you're not allowed to use specific information. So mask it or anonymize the data when you want to use it for analytics. Use all the features that come in with the service that you're using. For instance, with BigQuery, you get row level security. Make sure you're able to enable all that. Make sure you leverage the security options that come with the service itself. For the most part, like not most part, all in all the cases, all the services with Google Cloud, when it comes to databases and other services, you have you can see the list of certifications that it supports and others too. So most of these things are already taken care of for you. And on top of that, there is encryption of data at rest and in transit, which means data is encrypted while it's stored, and it's also encrypted when you're using it for transactional or analytics purposes. But beyond that, you can also enable user specific, customer specific encryption keys and other things. So make sure you're taking advantage of all of that, and consider your use case. You consider your target audience, your developers who needs access. Like there is a policy of least privilege. So make sure your team adheres to that, meaning give only the least amount of privilege that is required for any kind of access. So if you stick to all, I mean, all of these things are best practices and is also made available in the documentation of the service. Most of the services, like I'm not just talking for BigQuery. These are the things that you should remember, whether you're using Google Cloud or BigQuery, or for that matter, any other cloud provider, MongoDB, or any service for that matter. This should be your first and foremost thought. So sorry for going on a tangent again for this question. That was totally unrelated, but I just wanted to add those two points, Shane.
No, it's great to get that extra insights as well too. I mean, it is a question that comes up all the time, with regard to that, data, security of data, etc. as well. So thank you for that. I know we also wanted to go on to do a short demo as well too with the text bison from yourself there, Abby. Mira, was there anything else you wanted to cover? I know I sent out the GitHub repo there that this demo was based on as well too. So for those on YouTube and LinkedIn, in the comments, you can scroll back down and find that repo and jump on that as well.
Yeah, let's send them also the application URL. I think I have it over here. So I'll just post that in the comments if I'm sure people want to play around with it.
Come
I
up
see a
with the
lot of
next
comments about it.
multi-million-dollar movie idea, depending on directors and genres and actors. Somebody commented there that the 2030 Inception 2 Leo DiCaprio would be extremely old by then. So
I had a comment for that, but I'm not gonna say it.
Oh, please
I
say
know
it.
where you're going with that one, Mira, but don't go there.
I won't.
Perfect.
Okay,
Perfect.
cool.
So we're going to
Yeah.
swap over now to the second part of the demos. We mentioned there would be two. Obviously, we've gotten through the training the BigQuery machine learning model. Abby, you wanted to show us a little bit more about referencing text bison as well too in the remote model.
Yes. So yeah, I'll share my screen, but before that, I just wanted to say the I'll send you over. I think the links are already in the doc, Shane. I see that you've pasted some of it, and if you can, just paste the rest of the links as well.
I will
So
indeed.
we'll go over I'll show you the code lab. It has two parts. The first part is where you're actually doing the data to ML part, and the second part is where you're doing the generative AI part, right? So we won't be going through all the steps right now. It was very detailed in yesterday's session, but I'm going to show you where things are, and you can go and try it out by yourself. But the generative AI part, I'll show you in the Google Cloud Console as well. So yeah, let's get started. I'll present my screen. So it is for the same use case, the movie prediction, movie score prediction. And here is the code lab link. You can see that in the chat that says code lab link. Yeah, so this is the code lab. So it has about 12 steps, but don't worry, 3 of those steps are only boilerplate, like introduction, telling you what services we are using, which you already know. So BigQuery ML, so we are using BigQuery to store, we are using BigQuery, store the data for analytics purposes, and we are using BigQuery ML to perform the machine learning only using SQL queries. And then we are using Vertex AI's Palm API, which is the text Bison a model that will be using calling as a remote function from within a BigQuery SQL query itself, which means for doing all this ML application and building this generative AI application, you're not going to write a single line of any other programming language code, but only SQL queries, right? So you're going to be able to accomplish these things only with SQL. So that's the best part about it. And Cloud Shell, because we want to interact with the Google Cloud services with commands, just like a command line prompt, we use Google Cloud's Cloud Shell terminal. And the requirements are like you need to have your project created in Google Cloud, and it's pretty straightforward. But in order for you to make for you to onboard onto Google Cloud Console easily, there's a developers credits link as well. Um, I'll paste that as well in the chat. Oh, I can't paste it. Can you
I
please
can
do it?
take care of that. I have that. It'll come in
Yeah,
and give me
yeah.
1 minute.
So it,
I'll get that both into YouTube and LinkedIn for our viewers.
sure. So if you click that link, you'll be able to click here, as the button says, click here to access your credits, click that, and it'll show you some details and validate that and click continue. And it should take you, once you hit accept and continue. I'm not going to do that because already have some other credit that I'm using. So if you click that, it will open up the Google Cloud Console page for you. And this is what it looks like. So you will be landing on this page. And just a side note, if you want to access MongoDB from here, I mean, you already have that in the documentation, but you can just search for MongoDB. Whatever service you want, just search for that and click that particular thing, right? So it'll open up in the within the Google Cloud Console page itself. Anyway, so right now this is the page you should see, and make sure you're seeing a project on the top left corner drop down. If not, choose the project that has the credit associated with it, right? So that's pretty much it. If the project is not showing up, you have to click new project and then create. And it's just simple. Just give a name to the project and leave everything else as it is, and save it. That's it. This is what it looks like. Now, the link that I gave, that Shane's giving you for the developer credits should be enough for you. It's $5 credits. And whatever we are working on today or looking at today does not incur any cost. In fact, you can use it just to create, just to access and play with other Google Cloud services, the Vertex AI services. All right. So were you saying something, Shane?
No, I'm just saying that's great that our demo isn't going to chew up those credits, and they can take them for something else as well too.
Yeah, that's right. All right. So here we are in the code lab again. So I'm on step 3, preparing data. So before that, for the requirements, you have everything sorted. But there's one last thing: the APIs need to be enabled. So typically, when you search for a specific service, say BigQuery or Vertex AI or Cloud Functions or Cloud Run, it will prompt you to enable it, just saying with a button saying enable API. In my case, it's already enabled, so I won't see it. But if you just see that button, just click it. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing more than that. And it'll enable the API for you. And then preparing data. The data has already been made available for you. The movies data set. It's the same data set that we use for the app. We are using the same thing for the ML and the generative AI parts as well. So when you're preparing the data, you need to create the data set. So for that, it's pretty simple, just the one command from Cloud Shell. So Cloud Shell looks like this. So this is your console, and then the top right corner has activate Cloud Shell icon. So click that, and it should open your Cloud Shell like this. It'll take a few seconds to load, and then it's all set. Since I already have created or cloned the repository, I already have it. So I'm just going to show it. Uh, inside. So now coming back to the lab, in order to do anything like any analytics on your data, you need to have the data inside BigQuery, right? But there is also another thing that you need to know, that um, there are scenarios or instances where you don't have to store in BigQuery and just do analytics, just do the compute part in BigQuery, meaning the data can be in any other database that it supports and through federated queries, and you can just write queries and access the data from elsewhere, and they just be charged for the compute. You also have free limits for compute as well, so you can get a lot of stuff done within the allocated limits, even without paying for it. For storage anyway, you'll be storing it in some other service, so the federated query only works for only means that you're using the data that is stored in another database to perform some analytics using BigQuery. Anyway, that's just a side note that I wanted to share. Now, BigQuery dataset is similar to your database. So you need to create a database in order to create a table and then load the data in it. In this case, we are going to load the data in BigQuery. So for that, creating a data set, just use the BQMK location and name of your data set command. So run this, and it should show that the data set is created. And then clone this repository. And once you clone it, all the contents of this particular project will be loaded to your project folder in Cloud Shell machine. So if you see right here, these are the folders that are created. And if you want to see how it looks in your editor, there is a way to look at that as well. Okay, I think I accidentally closed it. So click open editor, and it will, this will take a few seconds as well in the interest of, okay, there it is. No, it's not loading still. Let's give it a few seconds while we still talk about the next step. So this will load, and then the editor will show. I just wanted to show you the structure. So, and you can see the CSV loaded right in there. So if you go to the repository, these are the things. It just has a README file with details of how to execute this lab, and also you can just use the code lab instead. And then the BQ Cloud Shell commands are the commands that are consolidated, and each command is explained. And then the CSV is what contains the actual data. Now, going back to the lab, the next step is, now that the data is cloned in your Cloud Shell machine, you navigate into the folder and then run this BQ load command to create the table and load the data into BigQuery. So in the data set that we already created, you will load this data. And once that is done, just run the select query command in the Cloud Shell terminal to see whether the data is loaded. So up until this point, I'm not going to run it and show it to you because it's right there in the lab, and the screenshots are also made available. So just check. So this is the CSV. This is the folder structure that got cloned when we did the git clone command, and we are using the movies_data CSV. All right. So moving on, let's just see what data is available in this table, right? The data set is already created from yesterday's demo, so I'm not running those steps. So Movie Insights is a data set. This is BigQuery console. This is what it looks like. You just go into this console by typing in BigQuery on the search bar and clicking that and enabling API if required. And then on the left, you see the Explorer. You see the data set name we created. And then you have the table, the movie score, which we just created. So either you can click there or press this and query, or you can just press plus button right here and then start writing your query. I copied that query from there. So this is just running select name, rating, genre, and runtime from this particular table and limit it to 3 rows. So as you can see, the data is loaded successfully. Moving on, data to ML. So this part, just in one query, you will create the model, and another query, you'll predict using the model you just created. Right? So this is not AutoML, this is custom ML. AutoML is just one additional construct line in this query. That's it. It's not a query, it's a create or replace statement. And then this is the keyword, and then this is the dataset dot model name that you provision and options. All these all these individual constructs, the argument, the parameters that you pass are explained in detail in the query details section. So just take a look at that. It's very, I mean, it's explained with examples. So go through the code lab to understand this statement. And then this part where it says data cat equal to train is because we are selecting the training data from the CSV that we have loaded right into the table. So data is already in the table, but out of that, we are only selecting the training data set to create the model. So this will create the model and train based on the data that you have passed into the statement. Now, now that you've created the model, analyze the model results and then see the model metrics, right? So where do you see that? Here in BigQuery console under model, just click the model that you just created. Our model is called model rating by runtime genre. Click that. And you can see the details of the model right here. You can see the evaluation metrics for the model. You can see that the accuracy is 98%. And to be more precise, this particular model has been created to only include to only do the prediction for the movie rating, success rating score, based on two attributes only, which is genre and runtime. We are not using all the attributes. That is the model we created last year. For this model, just to see how genre and runtime are impacting the model results. So this model that is covered in this new code lab has only these two attributes. I just wanted to see if genre and runtime together have any impact. So that way, when you're doing the generative AI application, you can ask, okay, genre and runtime are now okay. Now tell me about the other attributes, right? So I wanted to show you that clear difference. That's why I separated it that way. So here, as you can see, the key metrics are also explained. This is fairly you must, if you're into machine learning or if you have at least done logistic regression once, you probably already know these things. But if you want a one-line explanation, it's there in the lab. Next step, this is another query, and that's it. The model is done. The prediction is done. So what is that query? That is a select statement for predicting the success score of a new movie or a test data that for based on the model that we just created. So select star from ml.predict, that's the keyword construct, and then you pass in the model that you just created. And then in the subquery, you actually pass the test data that you want to perform the prediction on. That's it. This will result into something like this. So as you can see, the predicted score and the movie details are available, and the probability of other scores are also listed, right? How probable it is to be a 7 or a 5. So all that is listed. This is a result of ML. Now, it's still not generative AI, it's ML. Now, the generative AI part. So this is the part where we are using the text bison model in BigQuery. So this is also only using SQL. So in order, the only additional step that you'll have to do for this is to create an external connection. Why? Because we are using a model that is deployed in that is available in Vertex AI. So all these models that I told you about, right, the model garden, it's available here in Vertex AI. Go to the console, go to Vertex AI. If you sorry, I opened the wrong link. Vertex AI. Click that, and there is a model garden link on left. I just wanted to show that because it's pretty important to know where your models are or what all you can do with it. So I'll just quickly show it before we go into the generative AI demo. Okay. While it's loading, so we have to create an external connection as well. So this external connection will tell your BigQuery data set, will provide access to your BigQuery, the query that you're using to do this LLM, to create this LLM application. It'll provide access to the Vertex AI API. That's it. That's what the external connection does. So it is also, if you go to BigQuery right here, there is an add icon right here. So click that and then select external data sources and just provide this information here. Select the connection type as Big Lake and remote functions because we are using remote functions from Vertex AI. Provide the connection ID and provide a region that is the same as your dataset region and create connection, and you should be good to go. And then use the service account ID that gets created as part of the connection to provide access in the IAM module. So that step is also provided here in this code lab with screenshots. So it's just one additional step. Just take a look at step 7 to see how to create the external connection and grant permission. Now, once that is ready, all you have to do is create the ML model. What ML model we are using? What LLM model we are using? We are using text bison. So let's take a look at that in the Vertex AI model garden. So if you go to, this is the Vertex AI console. On the left, you have the Explorer. And then you go to model garden right here. It lists everything that's available for you to use, both open source ones, foundation model ones, which is Google specific. So this is what we are going to use right now, Palm2 for text, which is the text bison. So the part that I was telling you about generative AI studio is right here. So that is the interactive one. Anyway, but coming back to the model, this is just the single query that you'll run in order to expose that Vertex AI API as a remote function and create that model in BigQuery. That's it. And now there is one last query which you'll use in order to ask that particular question which you want to ask, like from the following text about movies, what do you think are the factors influencing a movie score to be greater than 5? That's exactly what I'm trying to do in the generative AI, right? Like Mira explained during the demo, and she was sharing the screen. She said, how do we understand what factors contribute to the success score of the movie? And I wanted to be more specific because this is the prompt. So this is one thing that we did not talk about earlier in the session, because I wanted to just club it as part of the demo. So the prompt is what you ask, right? Whatever you ask the model, the generative AI model. So in this case, you're asking what are the factors that are influencing the movie score to be greater than 5, but I'm also providing the data. That is why I'm saying from the following text. Now, where is the following text? That is what we are passing here as a BigQuery variable. Sorry, a query variable, and the value that it entails is here. It's formed in this subquery. And what exactly this subquery does is, this is all plain SQL, which you can use your logic and build this SQL right out. What I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to build a story out of, let's say I have 10,000 records in this data set, for the movies data set that Mira and I built. So these 10,000 rows are clubbed together in one big chunk of story that says a movie named so and so from the country so and so details has got this score. Now that will be the same repeated story for each movie that you have, and I've limited it to 50 lines just to make sure that it runs, so you can see the result. For the movies, you can actually see the movie and see the details. So I just wanted to say top 5 or top 50, whichever you want to test, and pass that as information and provide the parameters for the model itself. And then this will tell you what exactly um, it thinks are the factors that influences. So I've already created the model. I'm just going to run this and show you what generative AI tells us, what story it's got to say about um, the question, the prompt that we have asked. So when you're providing prompts to models, generative AI models in particular, be very specific and as detailed as you can, and also give examples. Like zero shot prompts are where you don't give examples. One shot prompt is where you give one example. There's few short prompts where you give multiple examples. So that is important to make sure the response that the model gives or provides is actually uh, what you're expecting to see, right? So in this case, it's telling that below are the factors I think are good. I don't see the full information here, but if you export the result into a CSV, you should see that it's saying all movies with a success score greater than 5 belong to the crime genre. And it also says that um, movies with sensor rating R. I read this a few minutes ago, so I know that that's what it said. This for the same data. So sensor rating of R, and also it said that movies with a higher budget than a certain amount had a better rating. So this is just a sample data that we've provided, but imagine this in your real world scenario. So that's a simple demo that I wanted to show. Thank you, Shane. Thanks for being patient while we went through that.
No, that was brilliant. I know you had an awful lot to cover while you went through that as well, too, Abby. The key thing for anybody trying to follow along, number one, this is recorded, so you can come back and go through that at your own pace as well, too. For those, we can post, obviously, the links as well, too. We've posted them already, essentially, to that code lab and also to the repo. So you can go in there and try and go and build this yourselves and learn more. That was superb. Anything further to add before, as we close out with the audience, either from Mira, from yourself, and from Abby? And from my perspective, I always learn an awful lot when I do this show. And, this is great to see it in action and to see the nuances about how these models, how you interact with them, how you retrain them, and I suppose the things to be concerned about when you're trying to build that query. And I know you only got to touch on it at the end, Abby, but the prompt is key, right? We hear all of this these days about prompt engineering is now going to be a new role, right?
Yeah, definitely.
Yes.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to it that season 4 of Code Vipassana is coming, and it's entirely generative AI themed. And I'd also discussed this with Mira. Like, she would give a best practices session, probably 15 to like a lightning best practices session. I haven't given her the date yet, but yeah. Season 4 will have a lot of generative AI, only generative AI focused applications, full stack applications. So it'll have Java applications, Python applications. And Shane, if you could just ping that link, it will talk. We'll talk a lot more about prompt engineering and other things there.
Yes,
So
2 seconds. I have 2 links to throw out for that. 1 second now.
Abby, can you tell us more about Code Vipassana for some of the listeners who haven't followed you and don't know about it yet?
sure thing. Thanks, Meera. Code Vipassana is a hands-on, basically instructor-led, very instructional, like highly instructional, code lab-driven applications that you'll build in 1 hour sessions. It's a series actually. So throughout this year, we've had 3 seasons so far, and the last and final season for the year is season 4, which starts on 6th November. There's a meetup group called Datapreneur Social. The link is there in the doc. I think Shane's copying it over. So if you sign up, it's a free meetup group. It's all virtual events. So it'll be sessions like this where it's code lab driven, but it won't be this fast. You'll have time to execute each and every step. Like you will also execute alongside, and you'll get free credits while you're getting to do the application itself. So these are very application driven. Like we built the movie prediction application, you will be focusing on building one application in that particular hour. And the best part is we won't be talking too much about concepts. It'll be like to the point, 1 or 2 minute of talking about each and every service that we'll be using, and then we'll immediately start diving into the hands-on part. And also you'll get to work on some applications on your own throughout the season, like in finale as well, and you'll get to send it back to us to review. So there is a form for submission of results. The thing is, what you get out of this is, of course, the learning and the experience. The opportunity itself is free. And the other thing is, some of our learners from the past 3 seasons who have been consistent enough are already on the path of becoming. One of them has been identified as the Google has been identified for Google's open source award, and one of them has started. I mean, because of the contribution, the learning that they've done from it, and they are on track to becoming GDEs. I mean, they are building their profile towards it, towards becoming innovator champions. And some have become speakers, some have authored in Google Cloud Medium blog channel. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunities, and they've built applications on top of it. So, and some have changed profession, a few. So that was really that is the winning shot for that particular thing. So yeah, I'll just cut it short here. So Code Vipassana is something where you build on your hands-on.
Excellent. I mean, and when does season 4 start, Abby?
It starts on the 6th of November.
The 6th of November. Okay.
Yeah.
Perfect.
It's at the
So the
same
links
timing.
went out
6 p.m.
there. You've got a meetup group there, and obviously the site for it as well too. So those of you following us on YouTube and LinkedIn, you have those links available for you, most definitely. Anything else to throw in, Mira, at the end there as well about kind of how all of this fits together? And I know particularly for you, generative AI has taken over an awful lot of the work that you do as a developer advocate here in MongoDB, right?
Yeah, it has. Yeah, certainly for all of us. It's been fun though. Yeah, and I think even without the generative AI parts, this combination of like BigQuery and MongoDB is quite powerful. We see it in a lot of our people from our community, our own customers, and it is something to consider definitely. Yeah, if you're doing analytics and if you're already on BigQuery, it is good to be aware that there is a good integration story over with MongoDB. So yeah, if you want to use both, a lot of people are doing it. So yeah, you're not alone in that kind of integration.
Brilliant. And you mentioned the community. I suppose I want to get a couple of plugs out. So I'm doing my job as host. We do have a wide developer community in MongoDB. You can go to community.mongodb and jump on there. And in our forums, our advocates hang out there, our engineers and our community team is there as well too. The Mira's output and the rest of the developer advocacy team is all up at developer.mongodb.com. You can go there and find out all of the blogs that we've done. You can see some of Mira's previous tutorials and repos that she has as well too. The other thing too, obviously this is MongoDB TV. We do have lots of other shows going on. So go to that really, really simple URL, mongodb.tv, to find out a little bit more. That said, we do want you to jump on. If you haven't already joined and registered for Atlas, you can use the link there. So short link, mdb.link/cc Cloud Connect Atlas 16. This is show 16. We'd love you to jump on there if you haven't registered already. But the big thing for us is to learn more about MongoDB on Google Cloud. So we have a page on our .com site which details everything that we do together. And it will, I've seen some of the enhancements that are coming down for that shared page as well too. We do so much together with the team at Google, Abby and the rest of our colleagues as well. Certainly check all of that out. And if you're not on, I don't have an account on MongoDB, but you do have an account up at Google Cloud, that's no problem whatsoever as well too, because we are in the Google Marketplace. So you can use MongoDB directly from the Google Marketplace and register through that without kind of worrying about accounts and setting something else up or going to procurement as well too. You can use your existing billings there. So that's all of my plugs that I'm supposed to get in at the end of these shows done. This has been a superb episode. I know anyone who's interested in tennis, tune in for the first 15 minutes because we went all over the place there and we figured out who Andre Agassi machine learned against, Boris Becker. We talked a lot about BigQuery, data flow, the templates that we have there, the change streams that we do for listening as well. And then obviously we dove deeply into Vertex AI. Abby went through the code lab that we have, and you can go and do that yourselves, no problem whatsoever. And we learned a little bit about how important prompts are as well. So for essentially an 80-minute episode, we've squeezed a lot in. Abby, Mira, thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Perfect. And I know there's going to be more. So look, keep an eye out for MongoDB TV for future episodes. Abby, we'd certainly love to twist your arm and get you back on. I did enjoy learning everything that you ran through. Mira, as ever, thank you so much for explaining, how MongoDB and Google are better together. But most importantly, for everybody who tuned in on LinkedIn and YouTube, thank you so much. Every Thursday, Cloud Connect, please do join in for future episodes, share amongst your colleagues. It's been a pleasure to have you, and we look forward to having you on a future stream. Take care, everybody.
One last thing, Shane, thanks a lot. And it's always a pleasure to be part of these MongoDB TV episodes. This is the second time, I think, for me. Mira, correct me if I'm wrong. I've done a couple of webinars, so I'm losing track of the number that I've been on the screen with her. But just one thing I wanted to address about the last question that was there. I don't know if I'll have access to it later.
Yeah.
What if you have missed seasons 1 to 3 of Code Vipassana? That's fine. This is independent session. So, and also thanks for that comment, Pavan. Yes, Code Vipassana is inspired from, because it's instructor led and very instructional. You will not be allowed to ask too many questions, so that's why it's called Vipassana. No talking.
Excellent. I love that. I love that. And Abby, the thing is, as an old boss of mine once said, the reward for good work is more work. So we will get you back on some future episodes of Cloud Connect. We'd love to have you. But for now, this has been superb. Thank you for sharing all of the insights and knowledge. And thanks for everybody who tuned in. Take care all.